Okay, Adam, we can't start without congratulating for the real news. I understand that Tabula and Outbrain now merge in a merge that is more than $1 billion. It's the first huge merge of two Israeli companies.
So I was surprised that it wasn't one of the options, and you know, who in the audience thinks that was real news?
Is this on? How does this work? Oh, there we go. I went to Israel for the first time a few months ago, and now I understand how only two companies that are both run by Israelis could not get along enough to create hundreds of millions of dollars for each of themselves.
Classic Israelis.
Only Israelis would have that much conflict. And I met with a government official, and I said, the reason why nobody can get along here is because everybody in government is Jewish.
John, what's more important than ego? I don't understand you. You know?
Yeah, exactly, right.
So first of all, I want to apologize because I emailed immediately all of Tabula that it was fake news, but then I realized that people told me I was insensitive for using that term lightly. So I want to take it back, but I don't think it's accurate. So that's my response.
By the way, I got a telephone call from my mother complaining, why didn't I tell her that I just sold my company? Apparently, there was a company called Altel in Israel that was acquired for like $30 million. I had a small company at the same time called Altal, which was in troubles. When the newspaper heard that Altel was sold, they immediately looked for the founders, and I saw myself on the front line after a successful exit. I got a call from my mother, very disappointed. My bank account manager was more disappointed.
Nimrod, at least your mom knows what you're doing. My mom's still trying to figure out what it is that I do for the past 10 years.
So actually, it's a good start. Adam, can you explain to us what you're doing? What is native content?
Maybe you say what I do and I say what you do.
Yeah, sure. So Adam has a content marketing advertising platform called Tabula. It's best known as the stuff at the bottom of the screen that says you might also like, and it's used by the largest publishers in the entire world. And the company was valued at north of $1 billion, and Fidelity recently invested in the company about, I don't know, 9 or 10 months ago? Yeah, year and a half ago, same thing.
So John, a few things about John. First of all, John, before that, we worked together as he was the CEO of Daily Mail North America. Before that, he was known for inventing branded content as he was the president and CEO of BuzzFeed. And now is the founder and CEO of a company called Cheddar, which the best way to think about it is like the next generation CNBC. So it's like CNBC that we grew up on watching on TV, but for younger audiences. The sad story, so the company is booming, everybody wants to invest. The sad story about that is that when he just wanted to start the company, we were good friends, we were having drinks, and he was telling me about it. I actually saw the business plan, and he said, would you invest? And I said, please. And then, so I gave a commitment that I would invest, and then once John spoke with other investors and realized that there's oversubscription on their company, he called me and asked me not to invest. Yeah. So I feel like I'm the fifth, I'm like Steve Betts from the Beatles. I could have been famous, but now I'm just the guy who knew him when he started. So that's what it is.
Let's be serious for a second. We talk about fake news, we laugh about fake news, but we have a big problem.
Yeah,
it's it's a failure of the truth.
The thing you did there it wasn't really a good exercise. You didn't put the sources. That's really the whole thing, and that's why I think Facebook is largely to blame for the entire thing, which is that when people don't know where they're reading the content from, like if you would put up there it was from Polit News, like there would be no issue, right? Instant articles caused a lot of this problem. People didn't know where they were reading it from. They didn't know what the source was. The point that I've made a lot, and actually, no, I'm sorry, the point that I saw that resonated with me is NBC, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, never done fake news. They've never done a fake news story. They've had errors and they've issued corrections, but they don't do fake news, right? Fox, I would have said, Fox doesn't do fake news, but I'm not sure anymore, right? But that's the issue. This is not a problem of the mainstream. John, this is a problem of the source being confused.
I agree.
Yeah.
So if you trust the source, that's okay. Yeah. You can assume there's no fake news. But if we consume 80% of our content now, as the statistic says, from our friends, going to Facebook, and actually I just need to tweak few people on Facebook to believe that the story is true, to spread a story, and it's disconnected now from the source. No one actually cares about the source. So how can we actually...
I mean, the issue is that the publishers are really to blame here too, because everybody's so afraid of what Facebook will do to them that no one is willing to speak the truth. That's ultimately the issue. If all the major publishers, everybody kind of dances and skirts the issue a little because everybody's so nervous about what might Facebook do to them.
I want to take a step back. So first of all, fake news, I think, have been here for forever. There are two reasons why we're having this panel today and speaking about fake news. One, the president. I think with Trump being elected, people had to wonder, how did that happen? So that's the first reason, and that obviously was a big news. And the second reason is that for the first time, the pipes were ready, right? So like with the growth of Facebook and Twitter and other companies, just to give you an idea, if you take $10,000 and you take a piece of story that you wrote and you host on your blog or wherever you want to put it, you can get up to about 500,000 people to read that story for $10,000. That means that the opportunity you have now from a storytelling perspective is to truly drive an opinion. It can be political opinion. Even worse, it can be medical opinion. I can convince people that I have this new pill that can make them feel better, and that's really, really bad. So I think that the main reason, the biggest difference is not the existence of fake news, it's the pipes that now allow it to scale really fast. And I agree with John that instant article of Facebook is true evil because you have no idea.
But Adam, let's be a little bit critical about the real media. You know, you're saying that real media sources do not have fake news. But there's something else we call the branded content, which is kind of like a euphemism from saying this content is not something we editorially choose, but something that was paid for. And most of actually branded content is hidden in different ways in the regular media, and it's a fake story actually about brands.
That's the least of it. I mean, you know, David Ogilvy did advertorials in the 1950s. That's not the issue. The issue is these rando sites with these bullshit stories that people can't tell are not a real site because they're reading it in a format that looks like every other article. That's the problem. Native advertising is not the problem.
But I want to tell you what scares me about what John said before. So I have a problem with the fact, you know, the New York Times is now succeeding more than ever because people are so afraid of Donald Trump and fake news. They pay to New York Times. Same for Washington Post and others. And I hate that. Because what seems, not the fact that they succeed, I don't care that they succeed. I don't like the fact that we're coming to this area that unless you're known, you're fake. Unless I know who you are, I don't trust you. And I can give you examples of, do you know a site called IFL Science?
Yeah.
Do you know a site called IFL Science? It's not the Wall Street Journal. It's not the Washington Post. It's the best science website on the planet. It's by this Canadian girl. She's in her 20s, amazing website, the small team, but nobody knows this website. It's not the Wall Street Journal. And I don't like the fact that now there's a notion of brand advertisers are only paying money if it's safe, if it's whitelisted.
No, but Adam, credibility is something that you need to earn. And you know what? That random woman in Canada, maybe she is credible, but she has to earn that over time. She's not Popular Science. She's not Scientific American. You know, credible. You just said if someone says something you don't know, if somebody says something that I don't know, if I don't know the person, they tell me something, my assumption is that it might be bullshit.
But John, how do we build, I think there is a dilemma here. Because one mechanism to go is to give the big platforms to sort for us or to filter for us what is a fake news. And we certainly don't want the platform, commercial platform, to do the check sorting for us or the truth sorting for us. On the reverse, it will be some mechanism to establish trust. What is a mechanism to establish trust in a distributed platform like the internet, where actually it could be a great story, genuine story, but coming from an unknown source?
So I think there's a two-way to deal with this whole thing. One is the companies such as Cheddar, Taboola, Facebook, others, Outbrain. I think companies should make a decision that they give a shit and they care. And that usually means that you need to develop some policy that you think makes sense. You need to hire people that would enforce that policy. And you might be wrong sometimes, you might be right sometimes, but you care and you'll do that. And that's, I think if every company around the world will do some small thing. I hire 30 people, right, that all they do from morning to night is reject and categorize content that we think is fake. And I reject about 50% of what people send us. So a lot of it is really bullshit out there. So that's one thing that I think needs to happen across the board. Facebook just reported they hired 600 people. I don't know if it's enough, but at least it's something. And then the other side of it, I think, is consumers. And I always say it, when you fly from Israel to New York on El Al, if someone offered you sushi, would you eat it in a plane? I think you wouldn't, because you're like, who's like crazy enough to eat like fresh fish on a plane? Because
but do we really have these sensors to tell what is a fake story, what is a real story, when it's a branded content that's brought to us by someone and it's not an editorial piece? Do we really, did we really create these sensors to sort for?
I think you can get better. I don't think you can. There's no way to make it 100% bulletproof, But if I hire people, junior people, that can categorize millions of content, then I think so can you.
Let's continue to another topic, which I think is a major issue. You know, while we're speaking about the truth and speaking about stories, we experience a crisis in journalism, which really leads to a lot of this commercialization of journalism. How can, if you are now the owner of a big journal or a big kind of like a big publisher, and you know that 2/3 of the millennials are using ad blockers, you know that the telecom operators are offering ad blocking, you know that soon most of the content will be ad blocked and your business model just go down the drain. How do you actually establish a solid business model when you're in the content industry in the current economy?
Well, I think that native advertising and branded content is a big part of the solution. And when we started doing it at BuzzFeed, everybody said it would be too small. And now I think it's been proven that that's businesses that you can generate hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue with that. You know, some of it is ad block, some of it is not ad block, depending on how you're serving it. And I think that's largely the solution. I mean, look, display advertising was always a very challenged product.
So do you think, by the way, there are many saying that display advertisement is just history? No one would actually go now for a campaign, a CPM model campaign with banners or display advertisement because we have like banner blackness. We don't see the banners anymore. We don't see display advertisement. So if you are an advertiser, you shift now your budget from display?
I think it's a question of if, you know, what I've often said is if I was an advertiser, I would use Facebook, I would use Google, I would use Twitter, I would use the large platforms with enormous scale, and then I would create branded content programs, and then I would use Taboola to drive traffic to them. That's what I would do. And as part of those branded content articles, I would want some rich graphical imagery, display, full-page takeover around that content.
John, let's ask an honest question about branded content.
Yeah.
Some of the branded content industry is trying to hide in various ways the fact that it's a branded content. The sources who give the content don't want it to be associated with a promotion,
again,
a sponsorship.
it goes back, but, you know,
and at the end of the day, if regulation would require you to better market as a branded content.
And the FTC has been pretty tough on this. And to be honest, again, it goes back to who are you buying the native advertising from? If you did a native advertising program with BuzzFeed, Vox, Vice, Bustle, any of these credible large companies, it's all fully disclosed, it's all promoted by, sponsored by, brought to you by, and not a single one of those companies would take advertising where somebody was either not disclosing that or not. I'm sure you could go to that site that you had up there and they would be happy to run whatever you wanted them to.
Just, you know, to be clear on that, currently, since the regulation is not clear, the only thing one need to say clearly that it is sponsored content or brought to you by an advertiser. You don't have to say who is the one who paid for this content. So and at least the regulator in the UK is saying, hey, we need clarity who actually paid for this piece of content.
It depends. So with us as an example, you can buy from Taboola and not only show the URL of where you're going, but actually the owning company at the top. Okay. So that prevents companies from, you know, creating fronts that you can hide behind. And just to your question again, the best advertisers that I now see are definitely not display advertisers. They're using content to drive not only awareness, but to drive real performance. I'll give you an example from America. So in New York, there's a company called Blue Apron, which is a cooking service. It's a subscription service that if you're a man and for the first time you want to cook for your wife and be a good man, but up until now you had no confidence in doing so, so you can pay Blue Apron, and they ship you every week ingredients with a menu for like babies, and you can actually do it. So it's an amazing service, but no one knew about it before. And what they did is they created videos and storytelling, and they used Taboola to get people to discover it. And now we feed hundreds of thousands of Americans using that service. So that's a new type of advertiser that in the past would use a big display, and now they use the story.
How much do you, many of the advertisers actually say that the future of advertising is going into interactive formats, some interactive formats with the audience, some like Playbuzz is doing, or others kind of like something like around polls or something around questionnaires.
Yeah.
Something that changed the dynamic, that you're just not being served by advertisement, but you're targeted.
You know, it's more engaging. And I want to go back to the broader question that you're asking of like confusion, misrepresentation. How many people in the room are Israeli? Raise your hand if you're Israeli. I went to your country, as I said a few months ago. It was so refreshing. It was amazing. I mean, everybody there was just like me in terms of like they say what they want. Everybody is direct. I went on a panel and I spoke my mind, and normally when I would do that, the organizers afterwards would be mad at me. this older woman was thrilled who was the organizer. I mean, I think part of the problem in this country is people are nervous about speaking truth to power, to corporate power, saying what Facebook does wrong, what advertisers do wrong. If we had the Israeli mentality here of just speaking our mind and calling bullshit and more openly arguing about this stuff, I think we'd be a better place here.
We need to wrap up soon, so just the last question on this. Ad fraud. This is something about speaking the truth with advertisers. We know now, I think that the WPP was quoted for saying when they buy now ads from publishers, from networks, it's just like buying heroin from a drug dealer. You know that portion of it would be real drugs, and some of it will be kind of like mixed with...
I've been very negative on programmatic advertising. Here's the issue with programmatic advertising. It's impossible to diligence. It's like subprime mortgages or mortgage-backed securities. There are so many people in the middle of it. You have no idea where it's going. You have there's no control over it. The science is so complicated, it's impossible for anyone to ascertain. I would never buy a programmatic display advertising dollar with 1 cent of my money.
Okay.
I just want to say, Nimrod, this was a bit negative panel. We're very optimistic people. The future will be bright. Everything is going to be awesome. The way to deal with evil is to surround it with positive vibes. So that's what we'll do.
Exactly.
And now we'll dance for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.